"Let your lineage sprout in me," said the Apache woman. The rancher let her stay. The ranch sat far from the main road, surrounded by open land that stretched until the sky seemed to rest on the earth. The man who lived there had chosen this place for one reason: silence. He woke before sunrise every day, fed the horses, checked the fences, and worked until his body felt heavy enough to sleep without thinking. People in nearby towns knew him as a hard-working rancher who spoke little and asked for nothing. They did not know why he preferred to be alone, and he never explained. His days followed the same pattern: coffee in a chipped mug, boots pulled on without hurry, the sound of animals greeting the morning. He trusted routine because it did not ask questions. The land did not care about his past, and the animals did not expect explanations. That was enough for him. On one late afternoon, the sky turned the color of dust and copper. A dry wind moved through the grass, carrying the smell of coming night. The rancher was fixing a loose wooden post near the gate when he noticed movement at the edge of the road. At first, he thought it was a shadow or a traveler passing by. Then he saw her. She stood still, as if unsure whether to move forward or turn away. She wore simple clothes worn by travel and weather. Her hair was long and dark, tied loosely behind her neck. There was no fear in her posture, but there was caution, the kind that comes from someone who has learned to read danger early. The rancher straightened slowly. He did not call out. He waited. People did not usually stop here unless they were lost, desperate, or looking for trouble. He had learned long ago that rushing toward strangers often brought problems. The woman took a few careful steps closer to the gate. Her eyes moved over the land, the animals, the house in the distance. She looked at everything with respect, not hunger. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, steady, and low. "I don't want to cause trouble," she said. "I just need a place to rest." The rancher studied her face. She looked tired but not weak. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of long days under the sun. She carried no bag, no weapon, no sign of hurry. Still, something about her presence disturbed the quiet he had built around himself. He asked the first question that came to his mind. "Where are you headed?" She shook her head gently. "Not anywhere safe tonight." That answer would have sent most people away. He had turned others down for less. But the way she said it, without begging, without drama, made him pause. He looked at the sky again. Night was coming fast. Out here, darkness could be unforgiving. He had seen what happened to people who underestimated the land. "You can't stay long," he said finally. "Just until morning." The woman nodded as if she had expected nothing more. "That's enough." He opened the gate and stepped aside. She did not rush through. She waited until he gave a small gesture, then walked in quietly, careful not to disturb the animals. That small detail stayed with him. As they walked toward the house, silence followed them. It was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy. The rancher noticed the way she moved, confident but gentle, as if the land already knew her. He told himself not to read meaning into it. Inside the house, everything was plain. Wooden furniture, clean floors, no decorations except a single old photograph turned face down on a shelf. He offered her water and a simple meal. She accepted with gratitude, not relief. She ate slowly, as if honoring the food. "You don't ask many questions," she said after a while. "I've learned not to," he replied. She smiled faintly. "That's a good lesson." As the evening settled, he showed her a small room near the back of the house. It was rarely used. He told her she could sleep there and leave at first light. She agreed without argument. Before closing the door, she spoke again. "Thank you for letting me stay." He nodded, unsure why the words felt heavier than they should. That night, sleep did not come easily. The rancher lay awake, listening to the familiar sounds of the land. Coyotes in the distance, wind through dry grass, but there was something else, a presence he could feel even without hearing it. He told himself it was nothing, just a stranger under his roof. Still, memories surfaced, moments he had buried beneath years of work and silence, times when he had chosen to walk away rather than stay. He turned onto his side, frustrated with himself. At dawn, he rose early, expecting to find the woman gone. Instead, he saw her outside, already awake, standing near the horses. She did not touch them, did not approach too closely. She simply stood, observing, as if greeting them in her own way. "They're beautiful," she said when she noticed him. "They know this land well." He nodded. "They were born into it." She turned toward him fully then. In the morning light, her face looked calmer, stronger, less like someone running. "I'll leave now," she said. "I've taken enough of your kindness." He hesitated. The words surprised him when they came. "You can stay one more day." She studied him, searching his face as if measuring his honesty. "Are you sure?" He was not sure, but he said it anyway. "The road isn't forgiving this early." She accepted with a quiet nod. As the sun rose higher, the rancher realized something unsettling. His silence no longer felt protective. It felt empty. And the stranger he had let in, for one night only, had already changed the shape of his quiet world. He did not yet know her story. He did not yet understand her words or her purpose. All he knew was that the land felt different that morning, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Morning settled slowly over the ranch, bringing light but not answers. The woman stayed true to her word and did not act as if the place belonged to her. She asked before touching anything. She watched before speaking. The rancher noticed these things even when he pretended not to. He went about his usual work, expecting her to remain near the house. Instead, when he returned from checking the far fence, he found her sweeping the porch with careful movements. She had found an old broom and was using it as if she had done the task many times before. "You don't have to do that," he said, not unkindly. She paused and rested the broom against the wall. "I know, but I like to earn the ground I stand on." The words stayed with him longer than he expected. Most people who passed through wanted comfort without effort. She was different. She moved with purpose even when resting. Throughout the day, she helped in small ways. She carried water. She organized tools without being asked. She kept her distance from the animals but spoke to them softly when she passed, as if greeting old friends. The horses seemed calmer when she was near, and the rancher could not explain why. They spoke little, but the silence between them was no longer heavy. It felt shared. At midday, they ate together at the table. She thanked him again for the food but did not overdo her gratitude. She respected his space and in doing so slowly entered it. By afternoon, the rancher noticed dust rising on the road. A neighbor's truck slowed as it passed the gate. It did not stop, but the message was clear. People had seen her. Questions would follow. He had lived in this area long enough to know how quickly stories grew. A stranger, especially one who did not fit neatly into the community's expectations, became a topic of interest. He had avoided attention for years. Now it was finding him. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the woman sat on the porch, watching the horizon. The colors of the sky reflected in her eyes. He brought her a cup of water and sat a short distance away. "You've noticed," she said quietly. "Noticed what?" "The way people look when they don't understand something," he sighed. "This place doesn't like surprises." She nodded. "Neither does mine." That was the most she had said about herself so far. He did not push. Instead, he found himself asking something he hadn't planned to ask. "Do you have family looking for you?" She was silent for a long moment. Then she answered carefully. "I have people who know where I come from, not where I'm going." He accepted that. It was enough for now. As days passed, her presence became part of the ranch's rhythm. She woke early. She rested when the sun was harsh. She never overstepped. And yet she belonged in a way that surprised him. One afternoon, a neighbor finally stopped by. The man leaned against his truck, eyes sharp with curiosity. "Didn't know you were hosting," the neighbor said. "She needed a place for a bit," the rancher replied evenly. The neighbor glanced toward the house, where the woman stood at a respectful distance. That kind of trouble tends to follow people. The rancher felt something tighten in his chest. She hasn't caused any. the neighbor shrugged. Just saying, folks talk. After the truck drove away, the rancher stood still for a long time. He had allowed her to stay out of kindness, not defiance. But now the two were beginning to look similar. That night the woman spoke more openly. They sat by a small fire, the stars bright overhead. "Where I come from," she said, "land is not owned, it is cared for." He looked at the ground beneath his boots. "I've always felt that way," she smiled, a real smile this time. "That's why this place feels safe." Her words touched something he had not known was open. For years he had worked the land without thinking about why it mattered so much to him. Now he wondered if the land had been waiting for someone who understood it differently. Still, tension grew. Another neighbor came by, then another. Some offered polite smiles. Others offered silence that carried judgment. The woman noticed everything, even when no one spoke. One evening she approached him as he fixed a saddle. "I don't want to bring harm to your life," she said. "If my staying causes trouble, I will leave." He looked at her hands, steady and honest. "You haven't done anything wrong." "That doesn't always matter," she replied. He knew she was right, but something in him had shifted. He was tired of choosing the easy silence over the harder truth. "You can stay," he said, "as long as you need." Her eyes met his, and for the first time he saw relief break through her calm. She did not speak. She simply nodded, placing her hand briefly over her heart in a gesture of respect. That night the rancher lay awake again. But this time the memories that surfaced were different. They were not only of loss, but of moments when he had wished he had stood firmer, spoken louder, stayed longer. Outside the land was quiet. Inside something new was growing, not loud, not rushed, but real. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that allowing her to stay was no longer just an act of kindness. It was a choice that would shape what came next. The mornings on the ranch had taken on a different rhythm. The sun rose over open fields, painting everything in gold, and the woman was already awake, walking slowly among the horses as if greeting old friends. She did not rush. She did not speak loudly. Her presence was gentle but confident, and the rancher could not help but notice the difference she made in the ranch, in its atmosphere, and quietly in his own thoughts. He had started the day with his usual chores, feeding the animals, checking fences, repairing a gate that had loosened during the night. But his mind kept wandering to her. She moved with intention, touching the land lightly, speaking softly to the animals, yet leaving no task unfinished. It was as if she understood the ranch in a way he never had, not just the work it demanded, but the spirit of it, the life within it. Finally, as he mended a broken post by the barn, she approached him. Her eyes were steady, thoughtful and calm, and her hands, dusted from the ground, held a small bundle of freshly gathered herbs. "These grow well in this soil," she said. "They will help with the animal's health, and they can be used for small remedies too." He paused, looking at her. "You know about these things." "I learned. Where I come from, everyone knows a little about the land, the plants, the animals." She offered him a small, polite smile. "It keeps you alive." He nodded slowly. It was clear she had lived a life that required attention to detail, a life shaped by necessity, courage, and understanding of the natural world. He had always believed he knew the ranch, but now he realized she saw it in a way he could not. It was not just land, it was life. That evening, after the chores were done, she sat on the porch while he prepared their small meal. For the first time, she spoke openly about herself, though carefully, and without urging him to listen. "My people believe that when we take shelter somewhere, it is not just for survival. It is about trust, about giving a part of ourselves to the land and the people who let us stay," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, deliberate, and filled with weight. "I did not come here lightly." He set down the plates, pausing to absorb her words. "I know, and yet you came anyway." "Yes," she said, "because the road is dangerous and the nights can be unforgiving. I needed someone to see me as more than a stranger. Someone who could understand the weight of silence and the power of care." Her words were striking. They were not about desire or demands. They were about understanding, about connection, about respect. He realized she had trusted him without asking for anything in return, only offering the honesty of her presence. He had spent years avoiding closeness. He had learned to shut people out, to live with work and routine rather than risk disappointment, judgment, or heartbreak. But now, sitting on the porch beside her, he felt the stirrings of something unfamiliar, a realization that trust could be given, that it could also be received. "Your words carry weight," he said quietly. "I feel it." She looked at him, a faint smile forming not from joy but from recognition. They must, otherwise they are meaningless. Days passed, and the rancher began to notice subtle changes. His neighbors whispered more, curiosity mixed with suspicion. People talked quietly about the woman at his ranch. Some offered cautious approval, others cast skeptical glances. He felt their eyes on the property, questioning, judging, wondering why he had allowed someone so different to stay. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by openly, leaning on the fence, eyes narrowing. "I hear you're keeping her here," he said. "You know she's not from around here." "I know," the rancher replied evenly, not inviting argument. "She's different. People might not like it." "I've seen no harm," the rancher said firmly. The neighbor grunted and walked away, but the conversation lingered in the rancher's mind. It reminded him that protecting her was not only about giving shelter, it was about standing up for his choice, for his understanding of what was right, even when others disagreed. That evening, he found her sitting by the fire outside. The stars were bright and countless, spreading across the sky in a way that always humbled him. She did not look up at the sky but at the firelight, at the shadows it cast. "I know people talk," she said softly. "They always will. But this, what we share here, is more important than gossip." He sat beside her, feeling the warmth of the fire, the quiet of the land, the presence of someone who had become more than a visitor. "You speak of trust and weight," he said, "but what about what you said before? About lineage, I still don't fully understand." Her gaze met his. She took a slow breath as if preparing to speak truths long held inside. "It is not about the past, not about what has happened. It is about continuity, about life moving forward. About allowing someone to plant roots where they are wanted and needed. That is what I mean. That is what I ask when I say, let your lineage sprout in me." The rancher absorbed her words, their meaning settling slowly. She did not speak of marriage or family in the way outsiders might assume. She spoke of life, of continuity, of respect for the past while embracing the future. She spoke of trust, trust in him, trust in the land, trust in life itself. He realized that for the first time in many years, someone had trusted him completely without asking for anything in return. And for the first time in just as long, he felt capable of giving that trust back, without hesitation or fear. The days that followed were filled with quiet understanding. She helped with the work, yet never imposed herself. She respected the animals, the land, and the rhythm of the ranch. Slowly, he began to see that her presence was not a disruption, it was a balance. She brought knowledge, patience, and an understanding of life he had never experienced. One evening, as the wind moved softly through the trees, he found himself walking with her among the fields. They spoke little, letting the world speak for them. The horses' gentle breathing, the wind over dry grass, the distant caw of a raven. "You have changed this place," he said finally. "Not by force, not by words, but simply by being here." She smiled faintly, looking down at her feet. "I did not come to change anything. I came to survive. And yet, perhaps life has its own way of teaching us lessons if we are willing to notice them." He nodded. The quiet between them now carried a different weight, not of unease but of understanding. They did not need to speak constantly. Their presence was enough. Yet beneath the calm, the rancher knew challenges would come. People would continue to question. The weight of her words, the request she had made, would grow heavier as time passed. and he understood that trust in life once given must be protected, even against doubt, fear, and the judgments of others. That night, as he lay awake listening to the distant calls of coyotes and the whisper of wind, he thought of her words again. "Let your lineage sprout in me." He did not yet fully understand all the meaning behind them. But he knew one thing. The woman had planted a seed, not just in the land, not just in the life of the ranch, but in his heart. And now, for the first time in years, he felt ready to nurture it, to protect it, and to see what life might grow from it. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, and for the first time, the rancher felt that the night was not empty or silent. It was full of possibilities, of trust, and of the quiet power of someone who believed in him, simply because he had chosen to let her stay. The morning arrived quietly, but with a sense of tension hanging in the air. Word had begun to spread in the small nearby towns that a stranger, a woman of Apache heritage, was staying at the ranch. For the first time, the rancher noticed not just curiosity but judgment. People who passed by glanced at the gate, whispered to one another, and some even slowed their vehicles to stare. He had expected some attention, but not this much. Inside the house, the woman prepared the morning meal as she always did, careful and calm. The rancher watched her from the doorway, noticing the way she moved with steady purpose, treating every task with respect and care. She sensed the tension as well and glanced toward him. "They are watching," she said softly, almost to herself. He nodded. "They always watch. But this time it's different. They are testing us." She paused, setting a bowl on the table. "And what do we do when tested?" He thought of the years he had spent avoiding confrontation, keeping life simple, silent, and controlled. He had rarely faced judgment from others directly, but now, with her, he realized he could not retreat. She had become part of the ranch in a way that made it impossible to ignore the outside world. "We stand," he said finally. "We do not back down from what is right." The woman nodded, a quiet approval in her eyes. She understood the meaning behind his words, the courage it would take to protect her, and the integrity it demanded. She had lived her life with constant observation, careful movements, and measured words. She knew what it meant to be judged unfairly. That day, the first real confrontation came. A neighbor, someone who had known the rancher for decades, rode up on horseback. His face was tight with disapproval. "I hear you're keeping her here," he said, his voice sharp. "Do you realize what people are saying?" The rancher looked him straight in the eye. "I realize it. She has done nothing wrong. I will not ask her to leave because of gossip." The neighbor's horse shifted nervously beneath him. "This is not just gossip. This is how communities function. You know that." "I know," the rancher replied evenly. "And I also know what is right. I will protect what is right, even if it is not popular." The neighbor said nothing more. He turned his horse and left, leaving a silence that felt heavier than the words that had been spoken. The rancher felt a rush of emotion he had not expected, fear, pride, and a deep responsibility. He realized that standing by her was not just about keeping his promise or offering shelter. It was about doing what he believed in, even against pressure and judgment. The woman joined him later that afternoon. They walked among the horses, letting the wind carry away the heaviness of the day. "You did well," she said quietly. "Most would have given in." "I couldn't," he said. "Not when it's about you, about what is right." Her gaze softened. "It is not just about me. It is about trust, about respect, about allowing life to continue without fear. You understand that now." He realized she was right. For too long, he had lived in silence and isolation, letting fear dictate his actions. She had shown him that courage was not loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, and constant. That evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, he prepared a small fire outside. The woman joined him, sitting on a wooden bench that had been worn smooth by years of use. The fire cast soft light across her face, highlighting the strength and calm she carried. "Do you ever regret staying here?" he asked carefully. She shook her head. "Regret is for those who have no purpose." I have a purpose, and this land, this place, this trust, it is part of it. You have allowed me to exist here without fear. That is not something I can forget." He felt a shift inside himself. For the first time in years, he felt connected, responsible in a way that went beyond work or routine. He was protecting more than a person. He was protecting life, trust, and a sense of justice that had guided him quietly all his days. The days that followed were filled with subtle tests from the outside world. Some neighbors asked questions indirectly. Others offered veiled warnings. But the rancher and the woman continued their lives, letting their actions speak louder than words. She helped with chores, cared for the animals, and respected the rhythm of the ranch. He worked alongside her, realizing that he had never shared this kind of responsibility with anyone. One morning, as they repaired a fence together, she spoke softly. "The world outside is always quick to judge, but here we can create our own rules. Here, life is measured by trust and care, not by fear or gossip." He paused, hammer in hand, and looked at her. "You've taught me more than I ever expected. Not about work, not about animals, but about life." She smiled faintly. "And you have taught me that trust can be given and honored. That is rare." Later that day, he walked along the edge of the field, noticing how the animals moved freely, the wind through the grass, and the light falling across the hills. He realized the woman's presence had changed more than the energy of the ranch. It had changed him. He felt more aware, more alive, and more willing to face challenges he had once avoided. As evening fell, the rancher and the woman sat once more by the fire. He poured water into 2 cups and handed one to her. Silence fell between them, comfortable and shared. "I know the world will keep testing us," he said finally, "and there may be days when it feels too heavy." She looked at him steadily. "Then we stand together. That is all we can do. Trust does not mean life will be easy. It means life is worth facing." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle in his chest. He had always believed he could face the world alone, with work and routine as shields. Now he understood that strength came not from isolation, but from courage, respect, and the willingness to stand for what is right. Night came, and the stars stretched endlessly across the sky. He thought of the choices he had made, the people who doubted him, and the woman who had trusted him without hesitation. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it felt like purpose, a reason to live fully, to protect what mattered, and to honor the trust that had been placed in him. For the first time, he understood that life was not measured by solitude or routine, but by the courage to stand, to protect, and to allow something meaningful to grow, even when it challenged the world around him. And in that understanding, he felt a quiet hope, a sense that the future, though uncertain, could be shaped by trust, honor, and care. The fire crackled, the wind whispered through the grass, and the rancher knew that together they could face whatever the world might bring. It was no longer a question of fear. It was a question of life, trust, and the courage to stand, fully and without hesitation, for what was right. The mornings at the ranch had begun to feel different now. The sun rose gently over the open fields, and the wind carried the familiar sense of grass, earth, and animals, but it also carried a sense of new beginnings. The rancher moved about his work with a quiet determination, and the woman followed her own rhythm, helping wherever she could, her presence no longer that of a stranger, but of someone who had become part of the land itself. The neighbors had noticed the change too. At first they had whispered, judged, and doubted, but over time their curiosity softened into quiet acceptance. They saw that nothing about the ranch was disturbed, that the animals thrived, and that the land remained as strong and alive as ever. Slowly, the idea that the woman belonged there took root in their minds. Her quiet confidence, her careful attention to the land, and her respect for the people around her had begun to earn her trust, piece by piece. Inside the house, life had taken on a steady rhythm. She woke early, helped prepare meals, and kept the home organized with a natural care that was not forced but intuitive. She never overstepped, never demanded, and never drew attention to herself. The rancher noticed the small ways she had changed the atmosphere, how the house felt warmer, more alive, and somehow more hopeful. He realized that trust and presence could be stronger than fear and isolation. One afternoon, as he repaired a fence along the edge of the property, she came to stand beside him, a small bundle of tools in her hand. She did not speak immediately, simply watched him work, understanding the rhythm of his movements. He paused and looked at her. "You've done more than help with work," he said quietly. "You've changed how I see everything, the land, the animals, even myself." She smiled faintly. "That is not my doing. You allowed it. You let life happen here instead of holding it back." He nodded, realizing the truth in her words. For years, he had relied on routine and silence to protect himself from disappointment and fear. But now, with her here, he understood that life's richness came from connection, trust, and courage. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened in small, meaningful ways. They shared conversations over meals, walked through the fields together, and worked side by side without needing to explain everything. Their understanding of one another grew silently, naturally, like the grass that thrived in the sunlight. The rancher found himself listening more, observing more, and trusting more than he ever had. One evening, as the sun began to dip behind the hills, painting the sky in soft gold and orange, they sat outside, watching the animals graze. The rancher finally broke the silence. "I've realized something," he said slowly. "Your words, the ones you spoke when you first came, they meant more than I understood at the time, about trust, life, and allowing something meaningful to grow." She looked at him, eyes calm but attentive. "They always meant that, but words are only part of it. Actions, that is how meaning grows." He thought of all the actions she had taken, the careful care of the land, the gentle way she treated the animals, the courage to face judgment without complaint. He understood now that trust and respect were not given lightly. They were earned, nurtured, and honored through consistency, courage, and kindness. As night fell, the stars appeared in countless numbers, stretching across the sky. The rancher felt a quiet joy he had not experienced in many years. The weight of past fears and judgments seemed lighter now, replaced by purpose and connection. For the first time, he understood that life could be full, not only with work and routine, but with shared trust and mutual respect. The woman spoke, breaking the comfortable silence. "You have given me something rare here, safety, trust, and a place to belong. That is not something everyone finds." He looked at her, feeling the depth of her words. "And you have given me more than I can say. You've shown me that life is richer when we stand for what is right, when we protect what matters, and when we trust one another." She nodded, her expression calm, strong, and peaceful. "It is not always easy. Life will test us. People will question, and challenges will come. But this is what makes life meaningful. Trust, courage, and care, they are worth standing for." The rancher reflected on the journey they had shared. From the moment he first saw her standing at the gate, tired and cautious, to now, she had become more than a visitor. She was part of the land, part of the rhythm of life here, and part of his own understanding of what it meant to protect, trust, and care. Time passed, and the seasons began to change. Spring brought new growth to the fields, young shoots reaching toward the sky. The rancher and the woman worked together, tending to the animals, planting new seeds, and maintaining the land. Each day was a reminder that life, when nurtured with care and respect, could flourish even after hardship. Neighbors began to notice the harmony between them and the land. The whispers and doubts faded, replaced by quiet admiration. They saw that the ranch thrived, not in spite of the woman's presence, but because of it. Her knowledge, patience, and courage had become part of the ranch's strength. One evening, as the wind moved gently through the grass and the sky turned deep blue, the rancher walked with the woman to the edge of the fields. He paused, looking at the horizon. "We've come far," he said softly. She smiled, a calm, quiet smile. "And yet there is still much to do. Life always continues, but now we face it together." He felt a deep sense of peace. For years he had feared change, feared judgment, feared connection. But with her he had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. It was standing firm in spite of it. Trust was not weakness, it was strength. And care, patience, and respect could grow something meaningful, even in the harshest of places. As they returned to the house, the rancher felt the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. The land, the animals, the woman beside him, they were all part of a new season, a new beginning. He knew that the future would bring challenges, but he also knew that they could face them together. That night, under the stars, the rancher and the woman sat quietly, listening to the sounds of the ranch. Coyotes called in the distance, the wind whispered through the trees, and the fire crackled softly. It was a night filled with peace, purpose, and promise. The rancher realized that life was not only about solitude, routine, or work. It was about the courage to stand, the trust to protect, and the love that grows quietly, steadily, and without rush. He looked at the woman beside him and felt a deep gratitude for her presence, her trust, and her understanding. In that quiet night, with the world stretched out around them, the rancher knew one thing clearly. The decision to let her stay had changed everything. Not because of obligation or expectation, but because trust, courage, and care had been given, honored, and returned. The ranch would continue to thrive, the land would continue to grow, and they would continue to face life together, with trust as their foundation and courage as their guide. And in that, the rancher understood the meaning of the woman's words from the very first day. To allow life, trust, and lineage to sprout, grow, and flourish, even in the quietest, simplest places. The stars stretched endlessly above, and for the first time the rancher felt a complete sense of belonging, not just on the land but in life itself. The past, with its fears and solitude, had shaped him. But the present, with her presence, offered hope, connection, and the promise of a future built on trust, respect, and quiet courage. And so, the rancher and the woman continued their days, side by side, letting life unfold naturally, nurturing the land, the animals, and the bond they had created. The ranch was no longer just a place of work or solitude. It had become a home, a sanctuary, and a symbol of what courage, trust, and care could achieve when allowed to grow. The night was still, the land was alive, and the story of their trust, resilience, and shared life had just begun its quiet, meaningful journey.